The issue is constantly having to, there are two issues here. One is the question of credibility, that if an Arab says something, he's suspect. He's not just suspect in terms of, by the way, his politics. He's suspect in terms of his accuracy and his methodology and his professionalism. So as a historian, he's not as good, even if he's good intentioned. So this is a problem. The same way we have historically this idea that if you gender prejudice, that if you're a woman, for example, and you said something, well, I'm not sure if it's rational.
The Arab is a little bit more stupid.
So the stupidity of the Arab, exactly, and also his inability or her inability to actually conduct history in a professional manner. The second issue we are talking about is the extent to which we are telling our own story with all its complications, and we are not trying to start our conversation about Palestine with, for instance, the Jewish issue. So I used to teach, when I started teaching Palestine, how I learned it, I would start with Zionism in Europe, and then I come to Palestine. Then I learned, no, I will start with what people were like in Palestine, how they lived, the landscape. So the first thing that the student sees is not the important problem of anti-Semitism in Europe. That's not where the conversation starts. Today, our problem is there's an insistence on beginning everything with our position on anti-Semitism. This is a European problem. We must start with Palestine, with the land, with the people, with the history, and then how the people and the land and the history was subject to something that came from somewhere else for other reasons, and how that something else affected them, how it actually transformed their life, changed the world. So starting with Palestine, centering Palestine, I think is the best response to what you're talking, rather than getting into the question of who did what and how. I think that's the best response we can make, that actually shifts the conversation without necessarily going back to who did what.
Yeah, this is a fundamental part of it. What you're saying right now, right? Part of this conversation also is so important because then we can, share it with others. And the more we share, and this is where we worried, how can we get the story of the Palestinian also from the historian, also from the academic who has studied it, because part of being colonized is that we have lost a lot of our stories. We have lost a lot of our elderly who could tell us the stories. The story, the complete story, not the stories in small pieces and the way that could be reminded by one or another. So therefore, we're going back to the historian. The historian becomes an important element, again going back to the first question you raised. The historian becomes a fundamental element in the struggle, in the liberation, because the historian has the story that we're missing, the missing links of that story as well. And I remember now we had a conversation with also one of your colleagues, Hicham Safieddine, young, very engaged, and his talk about the history was impressive as well. We needed that part that he had studied himself, because we're missing our elderlies. Again, I say it's so important. The more I'm insisting on the elderly, because our storytelling structures, as you were also referring, how crucial it was the Zionist movement to us as people, and the colonial power that came on us and upon us. Then they destroyed the structures that we used to tell our story. How the families used to tell their stories in their traditional ways, and in the collective, and how the villages, how the Bedouins, how in the city it used to be, how they structured, everything that structured our narrative, our story, was broken down into pieces since early century. I'm referring to the 20th century, that is, mostly, because it intensified in that period. And it is therefore, going back to the importance of the historian, I think it's a crucial element in the building up of our liberation struggle against colonialism.